Marcus had always imagined that dying would feel cold, quiet, and far away from everything. But when the explosion tore through his ship, he did not feel fear, only a strange peace, as if the darkness was welcoming him home. One moment he felt metal crush against his chest, flames rising around him, alarms screaming. And then, nothing. Silence. A soft, endless silence that made him believe his life had already slipped into the void. But when his eyes suddenly opened again, the world struck him like a storm of light and sound. He gasped for air he didn't know he still needed, and his vision slowly shaped into the inside of a dim, glowing chamber. The walls looked alive, pulsing with gentle blue light, almost like breathing skin. And right beside him, kneeling on the floor, was an alien woman he had never seen before. Her body shimmered with pale silver skin, almost translucent, and her long hair looked like strands of liquid moonlight. She wasn't looking at him at first. She was holding his lifeless hand tightly against her chest, shaking, her shoulders trembling as she cried. Her tears came down in glowing drops that fell quietly onto his arm, leaving soft streaks of light that slowly faded. Marcus watched her through blurry eyes, confused, until she finally lifted her head. When her gaze met his, her bright violet irises widened and a broken gasp escaped her lips. You are alive," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Marcus tried to speak, but only a thin breath came out. His throat burned. His mind felt heavy, like he was waking from a deep sleep that wasn't supposed to end. He looked at her again, trying to understand what was happening. She looked relieved, but her tear-streaked face felt like a mystery he couldn't explain. She quickly leaned closer and pressed her hand gently to his chest as if checking his heartbeat. "I thought I lost you," she said, her words trembling. "You were not breathing. You did not move. I believed you were gone forever." Marcus blinked slowly. Gone, dead. That was what he had expected. He remembered the crash so clearly, the pain, the darkness swallowing him whole. And yet here he was, alive, breathing, lying in a strange place with a stranger crying over him. "Who are you?" he managed to whisper, though it hurt to speak. She wiped her face with the back of her glowing fingers, trying to steady her voice. "My name is Sira," she said softly. "I found you in the wreck of your ship. Everyone else had escaped or perished, but you were still trapped. I could not leave you there." Her words moved him in a way he didn't expect. Why would she risk herself for someone she didn't know? Why would she cry for him, a human who was nothing to her? Sira gently touched his forehead with a warm cloth made of soft energy strands. "Your heart stopped," she whispered. "For one whole minute, you did not return. I tried to call you back, but I thought it was too late." Marcus stared at her, stunned. This alien woman had fought to keep him alive. She had cried for him. She had been there when everyone else had been gone. He struggled to speak again. "Why save me?" Sira hesitated. Her lips trembled. "Because no one saved my family," she said in a quiet, broken voice. "I could not watch another life vanish in front of me." Pain flashed in her eyes, deep. Old pain that spoke of loss he could barely imagine. And as Marcus lay there, weak and trembling, a strange warmth filled his chest. This woman had rescued him from death itself. He wasn't alone in the universe. Someone cared enough to cry for him. And that was the moment his life began again. Marcus tried to move, but his body felt weak, as if the fire and wreckage had stolen all his strength. He lay there, staring at Sira, the alien woman who had saved him. Her glowing violet eyes were fixed on him, and even in her exhaustion, she seemed full of quiet determination. She wasn't just helping him. She was fighting something unseen, a storm of fear or sorrow hidden beneath her calm. "Can you sit up?" she asked gently, her voice soft but firm. Marcus shook his head, too weak to even lift his arm. She smiled faintly, not mockingly, but with understanding. "It's all right. You've been through more than anyone should survive." She carefully pressed her hands against his shoulders and helped him slowly lean up. Even the small movement sent waves of pain through his ribs, but Sira's touch was steady, like an anchor in a sea of chaos. "This place. Where am I?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes scanned the strange ship around them. The walls pulsed like living veins, shimmering with colors he had never seen before: soft blues, pale purples, and glowing hints of silver. The air was warm, almost comforting, carrying a faint scent of something sweet and alive. He had never been in a ship like this. It felt alive, almost protective. "You are safe. For now," Sira said. "This is my ship. I found you drifting after your ship broke apart. Everyone else had gone, or didn't make it." Her lips trembled as she said it. There was a flicker of anger and sadness in her eyes, as though she blamed herself for what had happened. Marcus wanted to say something to ease her pain, but he couldn't. Words felt heavy, meaningless against the raw emotion he saw in her. She moved to a small panel and activated it. Streams of light floated above her fingers, forming shapes and symbols that Marcus couldn't understand. The ship seemed to respond to her, almost like it recognized her commands. This vessel, it will keep us alive, but only if we move quickly. They may come looking for survivors, she explained without looking at him. Marcus noticed how her voice carried both worry and a strange kind of bravery. Sierra paused, finally turning back to him. You are lucky I found you. You would have died in the wreck if I hadn't stayed. She reached for a soft, glowing cloth and pressed it to his forehead again. I couldn't bear to lose another life, she admitted, her voice trembling. Once is too much. I promised myself I would not fail again. Marcus's chest tightened. He did not know her. He had never seen her face until a few hours ago, or maybe it felt like a lifetime in the wreck. But the care in her every movement, the tears she had shed for him, made him feel wanted. He felt like someone had reached out across the stars to pull him back from nothingness. Why? Me? He whispered finally, unable to hold back his question. She hesitated, eyes downcast, and for a moment he thought she would not answer. Then she lifted her gaze, fierce and quiet. Because I could not. Because I could not let another life vanish without fighting. I lost my family long ago. I swore I would protect anyone I could, no matter the cost. Her words were steady. But Marcus saw the grief etched into her face. He tried to speak again, but no sound came. Instead, he reached for her hand and she didn't pull away. Their fingers touched lightly, and for a moment, Marcus felt a connection that went deeper than words. A life saved, a hand held, a silent promise shared between two beings from entirely different worlds. Outside, the stars shone quietly through the ship's translucent ceiling. Marcus realized that he was not alone. For the first time since the crash, he truly felt alive. Not just breathing, not just surviving, but alive because someone cared enough to cry, to risk, to fight for him. And Sierra, the stranger, had chosen to stay. Marcus had begun to feel a fragile sense of safety. Sierra had helped him sit upright, gave him water that shimmered faintly in her hand, and even managed to make him laugh softly when he coughed. But the quiet did not last. A sudden vibration shivered through the ship, making Marcus grip the edge of the console for balance. Sierra's expression changed instantly. Her glowing eyes narrowed, and her fingers moved over the controls like they were extensions of her own body. They're coming, she said softly, but her voice carried a dangerous edge. Marcus's heart sank. Who? He asked, his weak voice trembling. The raiders, she replied, her hands never stopping their dance over the glowing panels. The ones who destroyed your ship. They do not forgive, and they do not leave survivors. Her words were calm, almost detached, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. The way her hands clenched at the edges of the console. He remembered the attack, the fire, the metal breaking, the screams. He had thought he was the only one left. Now, listening to Sierra, he realized that danger had followed him. Not only had he survived a death everyone assumed was final, but that death was not over yet. Why? Why would they come after you too? He asked, confused and afraid. Sierra's eyes flickered with the shadow of sorrow. Because I took something precious. Something they want more than life itself. She tapped the console lightly, and a hidden compartment opened. Inside rested a small crystal sphere, glowing softly with swirling blue light. Marcus leaned closer, awe and fear mixing in his chest. What is it? He whispered. The last memory of my people, Sierra said quietly. If they take it, or destroy it, my entire civilization will vanish. My world is gone, but this remains. It is all that is left of my home. She held it close to her chest, her trembling hands shaking slightly despite her resolve. Marcus realized the weight she carried was enormous. Not just his life now, but the future of a whole lost civilization rested in her hands. The ship jolted violently, throwing them both off balance. Marcus hit his ribs against the seat, sharp pain shooting through him. Sierra caught him immediately, pressing her hands to his shoulders. We must move, she said. We cannot stay here. They will not stop. He wanted to argue, but his body ached. How can we escape? He asked, fear rising in his chest. Sierra's eyes softened as she looked at him. You survived death once, she said, almost like a statement and a promise at the same time. You do not need to fight now. You only need to trust me. Her voice carried no arrogance, only calm certainty. Marcus felt a strange sense of hope. Even in the shadow of impending danger, the ship turned sharply, weaving past asteroids and fragments of metal that floated in space like ghosts of the battle. He had barely survived. Red flashes lit the walls as sensors detected approaching enemy vessels. Marcus watched, heart pounding, as sleek, jagged ships appeared behind them. Their engines burning with hungry, hostile light, Sierra's movements were fluid, precise, almost inhuman. She guided the ship with confidence, but Marcus could see the strain in the small lines of her face, the tension in her glowing fingers. Every turn, every dodge, every calculation seemed to pull her energy into the crystals she held so carefully. He swallowed hard and whispered, "Why? Are you helping me? You barely know me." Sierra's gaze softened. "Because I could not leave another life behind. You woke my heart when I thought it was gone. You remind me that even in loss, there is still a reason to fight. I cannot fail again." The raiders' ships drew closer, the red glint of their engines like fire in the darkness. Marcus gripped the console as another tremor shook the ship. The fear he had felt in the wreck came rushing back, but this time he was not a lone dot, and beside him, Sierra, the alien who had cried over his broken body, was not just a stranger. She was a lifeline, a protector, and a fierce force determined to carry him beyond death once more. Marcus took a shaky breath. Whatever came next, he would face it not as a victim, but as someone alive because someone believed he deserved another chance. And for the first time since the crash, that thought gave him more strength than he had ever felt. The ship lurched violently as Marcus gripped the armrest, his ribs screaming in protest. The stars outside had transformed from peaceful points of light into streaks of fire, a furious river that marked the raiders' relentless pursuit. He had survived one death, but now survival felt like a nightmare in motion. Sierra's hands flew over the glowing panels, every movement precise and confident. The ship itself seemed alive, responding to her touch with a subtle pulse. "Hold on," she said without turning. Her voice carried calm authority, even as red warning lights flashed and alarms screamed around them. "This is going to be rough." Marcus tried to focus, his heart hammering. He watched her silhouette, the way she leaned over the console, long hair shimmering like silver blue water. She was fearless, or at least, she hid her fear so well that it became impossible not to believe in her. Every twist and turn she executed made the difference between life and death. The pursuit intensified as the raiders' ships closed in. They moved like dark predators, engines burning with anger. Marcus swallowed hard. He could see jagged holes slicing through the asteroid field ahead. One wrong move would send them crashing into the fragments of a shattered moon, leaving nothing behind but fire and silence. Sierra guided their ship through narrow canyons of floating rock, the walls scraping past with terrifying closeness. Marcus felt the heat of friction through the hull, the sharp tremors that vibrated in his chest. "You're amazing," he whispered between gasps, half in awe, half in fear. She glanced at him briefly, a faint smile breaking through her concentration. "Amazing is surviving," she said. "We have to focus. One mistake, and it's over." Her eyes returned to the controls, and her hands danced across the glowing tendrils like a pianist playing a frantic melody. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, throwing Marcus forward. Sparks rained down, and the chamber shook violently. "They're firing," he yelled, gripping the seat. Sierra leaned over him, steadying his shoulders with firm hands. "Don't move," she shouted, her voice commanding, yet edged with worry. The ship veered sharply, narrowly avoiding a jagged asteroid that could have ended everything. Marcus felt his stomach lurch as the G-forces pressed him back. He looked at her again. She wasn't just controlling the ship. She was fighting for their lives, every second a desperate battle against the dark tide closing in. "Why? Why risk yourself for me?" he asked through clenched teeth. His body ached, but he needed to know. Her hands never stopped moving. "Because I promised," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I promised I would protect life wherever I could. I cannot watch another person die alone. Not again." Her voice shook slightly, and Marcus realized that her strength was both natural and fragile. She was human in her courage, alien in her ability to survive. Another raider's blast grazed their hull, sending sparks flying across the room. Marcus grabbed the console for balance. The crystal sphere Sierra had hidden against her chest shimmered faintly. As though sensing the danger, he realized that the object she carried was more than precious. It was a symbol of hope, of memory, of life itself. They dove deeper into the fractured moon shadow, twisting through narrow chasms, racing towards safety. The raiders followed, relentless and determined. Marcus felt fear grip his chest again, but it was tempered by awe. He was alive, guided by someone who had seen loss and refused to let it happen again. In that moment, amidst the chaos of stars and rocks and deadly pursuit, Marcus understood something essential. Survival was no longer about him alone. It was about trust, courage, and the bond forming between him and the alien who had cried over his broken body. He took a shaky breath and whispered, "I trust you." Sierra's eyes met his for a brief, fleeting second. For a heartbeat, the violence of the chase paused in the quiet understanding between them. Then the ship twisted sharply again, plunging into darkness, and the chase continued. Marcus's heart raced, but the fear was different now. This time, he wasn't facing death alone. And for the first time since the wreck, he felt hope. The ship shuddered violently as Marcus gripped the armrest, his ribs aching with every jolt. Outside, the raiders' vessels glimmered like dark stars in pursuit, relentless and merciless. Each one seemed hungry, ready to destroy anything that survived the wreckage. Marcus had survived death once, but now it felt like the universe was testing him again, and this time, the stakes were higher. Sierra's hands moved over the controls with skill and precision. The ship responded instantly, twisting and turning through the fractured terrain of the moon below. She guided them between jagged rock formations and collapsing ridges, the ship dancing through danger with almost impossible grace. Marcus could barely believe what he was seeing. She was fearless, yet he could sense a strain hiding behind her glowing eyes. "You shouldn't have done this alone," Marcus said quietly, watching her work. His voice carried both admiration and guilt. He knew she risked everything for him. Sierra's shoulders stiffened for a moment, but her gaze remained locked on the glowing panels. "I had no one else," she said softly. "My world is gone. My family is gone. Only this remains." She held the crystal sphere close to her chest, its swirling blue light pulsing softly in the dim cabin. Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized the weight she carried. He stared at the sphere, mesmerized. Inside, the mist swirled like countless whispers, each one a memory, a life. A world reduced to fragile light. Marcus swallowed hard. He had known loss in his life, but this was an entire civilization resting in the hands of one survivor. "Why risk yourself for me?" he asked again, voice trembling. He wanted to understand the courage that seemed impossible, yet undeniable. Sierra paused, her fingers brushing the sphere as though drawing strength from it. "Because I could not leave another life behind," she whispered. "Once, I failed. My family. I could not save them. I promised myself that if I ever had the chance again, I would not fail." Her voice trembled, thick with emotion, and Marcus realized that she was not just fighting for him, but for every life that had been lost before. Another tremor shook the ship, and sparks rained down across the cabin. The raiders had fired again. Marcus grabbed the console for support as Sierra twisted sharply, narrowly avoiding a jagged rock formation. The ship tilted dangerously, and he felt the fear clawing at his chest. But then he saw the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had kept him alive until now. "They're closing in," he whispered. We can't outrun them forever." Sierra's voice was calm but firm. "We do not need to outrun them. We need to survive smartly. Every move counts, every second matters. Trust me." Marcus nodded, though his body ached and his mind raced. For the first time, he felt that trust was more than hope. It was a lifeline, a tether between two beings who had nothing in common but this moment of survival. As the raiders drew nearer, Marcus realized the truth. Their fight was no longer just about escaping. It was about preserving life, memory, and hope. Sierra's world, lost as it was, depended on this fragile vessel and on their courage. And Marcus, fragile as he felt, had become part of that hope simply by surviving the first death. A sudden blast rocked the ship, sending Marcus sprawling. Sierra gripped the controls tightly, her voice rising above the alarms. "We cannot falter now. Hold on." The ship twisted violently, the crystal sphere glowing brighter as if sensing the danger. Marcus felt the pulse of energy running through the cabin, almost alive, almost protective. In that moment, he understood something vital. Survival was more than living. It was carrying the weight of those who could not survive, holding their memories, their hopes, their dreams. Sierra had done it for her people, and now she was doing it for him, too. Marcus exhaled slowly, letting the fear settle into determination. "I will not let them take it," he said quietly. "Not now, not ever." Sierra glanced at him, her eyes softening with faint gratitude. "Then we survive together," she said, "because life, even fragile, is worth protecting." As the ship twisted through the dark canyons of the moon, Marcus felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. They were running, yes, but they were also fighting for something larger than themselves, a chance for memory, for hope, for life to continue, even against impossible odds. And in that moment, he realized he was alive not by chance, but because someone chose to care. The ship shuddered violently as another blast hit the hull, throwing Marcus against the wall. Sparks rained down around them, and the dim glow of the cabin flickered like a heartbeat in pain. The raiders were relentless, their ships cutting through the shadows like predators closing in on a wounded prey. Marcus felt fear gnawing at his chest, but this time it was tempered by a new feeling, determination. Sierra's fingers flew over the controls, every movement precise, every decision life or death. She leaned forward, pressing herself close to the glowing console, her eyes sharp with focus. Yet Marcus could see the strain in her shoulders, the tension in her glowing hands. She was giving everything, her strength, her energy, her heart, to keep them alive. "They're boarding us," Marcus shouted as alarm screamed. He saw the jagged hull of one of the raiders' ships press close against their own. Shadowy figures moved along its surface, preparing to break through. Sierra turned to him, her face a mixture of resolve and fear. "Stay behind me," she commanded, her voice steady even as her hands shook. "You cannot fight yet." Marcus swallowed hard, pain and adrenaline mixing. He wanted to argue, to help, but his body was still weak from the crash. He could only nod, trusting her instinct, trusting the woman who had saved him once already. The raiders broke through the hull. A blast of darkness and fire hit the cabin as the first figure stepped in. Tall, armored, and merciless, the raider moved like a living weapon. Marcus flinched, gripping the edge of the console. Sierra stepped forward, holding the crystal sphere tightly against her chest. Its soft glow pulsed as if warning the intruders. "Leave," she shouted, her voice ringing through the chaos. "You will not take this." One raider lunged at her, a cruel blade aimed straight for her. Marcus froze, unable to move. But then, Sierra pressed her hand against the ship's core console, and a surge of energy burst outward. The light was blinding, golden and pure, crashing against the raiders like a tidal wave. Marcus felt the force press him back, and when the light dimmed, the raiders had been thrown back. Battered but not destroyed, Sierra fell to her knees, gasping, her strength nearly spent. Marcus rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" he asked, panic rising. She shook her head slightly, her fingers clutching the sphere. "The ship? I used the core's power. It will not hold again," she admitted, voice weak but unwavering. "We survived this attack, but we are not safe yet." Marcus helped her stand, feeling the weight of her exhaustion, the enormity of what she had done. She had risked everything, not just for him, but for the last memory of her people, for the fragile hope of life that still remained. "They'll come again," Marcus said, voice low. "We have to be ready." Sierra looked at him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "I promised that no life would end while I could fight for it, and I promised I would not fail again. You are part of that promise now." She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and sorrow. Marcus swallowed, realizing the truth of her words. She had saved him once, yes, but she had also given him a choice, a chance to live, to fight, to hope. And now, in this moment of darkness, he understood that survival was no longer just about staying alive. It was about protecting what mattered, about carrying hope when all else seemed lost. Another tremor shook the ship. Marcus gritted his teeth, pain shooting through his side, but he refused to fall. Sierra steadied herself, her hand brushing his briefly, a silent gesture of trust and connection. "We are alive," she whispered, "and because of that, we can still fight, together." Marcus nodded, drawing courage from her unwavering resolve. "Together," he repeated, letting the word anchor him. Outside, the stars glimmered silently, distant and indifferent, but inside the fragile cabin, to lives one human, one alien stood defiant against death. They were battered, exhausted, and afraid, yet unbroken dot, and in that small, trembling vessel hurtling through the darkness, hope burned brighter than any star. The ship drifted through the silent void of space, battered and bruised, its walls faintly glowing with the soft pulse of its dying systems. Marcus sat beside Sierra, both of them exhausted, breathing hard, and covered in soot and scratches. The raiders were gone for now, forced back by the surge of energy Sierra had unleashed. But the danger still hung in the air, like a shadow stretching long across the stars. Sierra held the crystal sphere close to her chest, her hands trembling slightly. The blue light inside swirled gently, as though it sensed their relief but not their safety. Marcus watched her, his chest tight with admiration and concern. She had given everything, the energy of the ship, her strength, even the risk of her own life to keep him alive and to protect the last memory of her people. He realized that this fragile, glowing sphere contained more than memories. It contained hope, heritage, and the remnants of a vanished civilization. "You did it," he whispered, his voice weak but filled with awe. "You saved me, and everything in the sphere." Sierra gave a small, tired smile, her eyes softening with the faintest glimmer of relief. "I did what I had to do," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable now. "But the ship cannot go further. Its systems are failing. I cannot protect us both much longer." Marcus's stomach clenched. He looked at her, noticing how fragile she seemed in this moment of calm after chaos. She was no longer the invincible guide who had led them through death. She was just a being, exhausted, bearing unbearable weight. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "Then we'll face what comes next together. I'm not leaving you." Sierra's lips curved in a faint smile, and for the first time since he had woken, she allowed herself to breathe without the sharp edge of tension. "Promise me something," she whispered. "If I fall, you must carry this forward. Keep the memory safe. Protect what remains." Marcus shook his head firmly. "No, you're not falling. We survive, together." A soft vibration ran through the cabin as the ship gently landed on the surface of a quiet, barren moon. Outside, the stars shimmered like distant eyes watching them, indifferent and eternal. Marcus helped Sierra step onto the surface, her body leaning against his for support. She was tired, yes, but alive, and the sphere remained safe in her hands. They looked up at the sky, the void above full of cold beauty. Marcus realized that life, fragile as it was, had given him a second chance, not just to breathe, but to care, to fight, to witness courage beyond understanding. And Sierra, an alien stranger who had cried over his broken body, had become a companion, a protector, and a symbol of hope. "You were supposed to die," Sierra whispered, her voice barely audible over the faint hum of the ship. "But you lived. And because of that, I was not alone." Marcus held her closer, feeling her warmth seep into his chest. "Then we keep living. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who cannot. We are the memory now. We carry them forward." For a long moment, silence fell between them, soft and sacred. The wrecked ship behind them, the dangers they had faced, and the losses they had survived seemed distant now. What remained was life, fragile and luminous, and the bond formed in the fires of survival. Sierra's hand brushed against the crystal sphere, and the light inside pulsed brighter than before. Marcus realized it was as if the sphere recognized the promise they had made to protect, to remember, to endure. Together, they walked toward the horizon of the barren moon, uncertain of what lay ahead, but unafraid. Each step was a declaration that life mattered, that memory mattered, and that even in the darkest corners of space, hope could survive. Marcus glanced at Sierra. Her eyes met his, glowing softly under the alien stars. "We are alive," he said. "Yes," she replied, smiling faintly. "And we will make sure that life continues, no matter what comes next." In that quiet, glowing moment, a human and an alien begin a new journey. Two lives, one shattered by death and loss, now intertwined. Two hearts that had faced the void and survived, carrying hope for a forgotten world and the promise that memory and life could endure. Even in the coldest reaches of space. And in the endless night above, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter, as if bearing witness to their courage and the beginning of something new. Humanity had faced death, but together, they had created hope.